All right. Welcome to the stream, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I think we're just gonna hold on a little bit, let some people join the stream. Hope you guys are having a happy, what day is it? Tuesday. All right. Awesome. Cool. Sounds like we're over 100 people, so let's go ahead and get started. Guys, my name is Ali. You know me as NF Thune in Discord. I'm the product lead on the Vox team. If you're part of the Gala community, then we probably chat all the time. But I've got two very special guests with me. The first needs no introduction. You all know him. You all love him. Will, I know you hate when we do introductions, but creator of SimCity, creator of The Sims, creator of Spore, and now creator of the VOXverse, Will Wright. And we've got a special guest with us today. We've got Laura, aka the Miami Ape. Laura is here with us as sort of the voice of the audience. So a lot of you guys from the Gala community, you know all about VOXverse. You guys have some context. You know, you're coming, you're ready with your questions. But specifically in light of this next drop that we have in collaboration with DreamWorks and in collaboration with Coinbase, we're starting to see a lot of new audience members flow through, and so we wanted to give them sort of more context. And so Laura is kind of that voice as we expand to new communities, who's going to be asking questions. You know, if Will and I are babbling about stuff that we've been talking about for 6 months with little context, she's going to keep us honest. So yeah, we thought her voice would be super important, especially as we start to expand beyond our community. And collaborate with some other communities. So we've got some really exciting announcements for you on that coming up this week, and more up our sleeve. So really excited to have you both. I'm going to kick off with just a little bit about Vox for those of you guys who don't know. So we're part of Gala. Gala is games, it's music, it's film, and Vox is sort of the connective tissue that holds it all together, right? We always call ourselves kind of the avatars as you traverse the Galaverse. And so you'll see a lot of utility within Gala's first-party games, but also a real strong sense of identity within the community. Vox are these adorable, lovable little characters, and they live in the VOXverse that's being designed by Mr. Will Wright. And so, among other things, that's what we're here to talk about today. This is going to be a real juicy AMA for you guys. So we've got some nice updates on VOXverse progress. We're going to talk about the Trolls drop. We're going to talk about DeFi. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. So really excited. But wanted to kick it off in celebration of the Trolls drop that goes live this Friday, the 14th of October, with a little bit of an in case you missed it video. That is so freaking epic. Yeah, just wanted to, in case people hadn't seen that video, I mean, what an epic move for a Web3 project to be collaborating with the creators of the Trolls, DreamWorks, you know, and what a really cool just endorsement of the space. Okay, you saw a couple of real adorable Vox characters in that snippet, and as I mentioned earlier, they live in the VOXverse, which is being designed by Mr. Wright. Will, what are we building here? Is this an MMO? What are we doing?
Yeah, we're building a very elaborate world, very large. You know, it's going to basically be in the shape of a cube to kind of mirror the Vox style. There can be very different environments within that world. There'll be like a desert area, mountain, jungle, ocean. as well as urban, which is where the largest, kind of city will be built, Voxopolis. In addition to that, we're going to have different themes overlaid upon that, which will be connected to different games. We'll have like a Western area, medieval, horror, fantasy forest. And these things kind of mix together in interesting ways, along with the different Vox drops, Walking Dead, Mirandus, Trolls, Townstar, etc. And within that, we're going to actually have a very elaborate MMO where characters come in, they have social reputation, they have things they can build and own, resources they can mine. I mean, there are a lot of dimensions to this world right off the bat. And you can come in actually as either a Vox owner or as a free-to-play player and engage in this world, explore it, choose your own role, etc.
Awesome. Okay, so much to unpack there already. First off, let's talk about these biomes, Will. So we're seeing here on the screen, we've got some sort of desert, some sort of ocean. You mentioned the cube. How does that all fit together? Are these different sides of the cube?
Yeah, I mean, we basically have this world that looks like a cube. The top of the cube is going to be primarily what we call the urban zone, and that's where Voxopolis, the central city, almost like Gotham City, will be built. On the four sides of that, we will have very different biomes, environments: desert, jungle, ocean, mountain. They'll have different resources available to them. So, for instance, if you want spice, you go to the desert. If you want silicon, you go to the ocean. These resources will be used to create and build things within the world, but they will blend into each other as well. The bottom side of the cube we don't talk about yet. All right, that's that's off the table right now. The bottom side of the cube is a mystery, but those are the biomes, the environments of the world. But in addition to that, we have districts that are overlaid on the cube. Things like Western, medieval, horror, fantasy forest, which will influence things like the architecture, the type of voxes that live there. So it's going to be several dimensions of interaction across biomes, districts, etc. that you'll be dealing with.
So Will, what you're saying is like within there's sort of crossover between the district system and the biome system, right? So I can go from perhaps desert horror to desert Western, right? Or
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there'll be a blending. I mean, if desert is next to a jungle, there'll be a transition zone. But in the middle of that, there might be, the horror district or the Western district.
Mm-hmm.
So there are several dimensions here that influence, what you can build, the architecture, the style, as well as what voxes live there, as well as the resources available in that biome.
Okay, very interesting. So we've got some images here of some of the concept art that's being done for the various districts. So here we've got Fantasy Forest. You can see it really has that kind of magical, fantastical feel to it. We've got horror, which is sort of eerie, but it's not. Well, how would you describe this? You said it was kind of.
Well, the horror district, we're actually going for something that's a little bit between kind of dystopian future and gothic. All right, we don't want it to be so much werewolves and Frankenstein, but more like dystopian post-apocalyptic, and it might be Victorian architecture, with graveyards and whatnot. But also each of these districts is going to have a very different environmental style. So in the horror district, it's usually going to be nighttime, mist. In the Western district, it'll mostly be high noon, bright sunlight, very dry. So it's not just the environment, but the time of day as well. That as you go from Western to horror, you'll be going from high noon to midnight with mist. So we want each of these districts to have its own environmental ambience, if you will.
I love that. Okay, so it's so much more than just the structures or the buildings or the architecture of it. There's very much like the vibe changes across space, not just across time, or as opposed
Yeah,
to.
well, in fact, I think time is going to be pinned to the district. So if you go from horror to Western, you're going to go from midnight to high noon.
Okay, we need to loop back on that in a second about what that means for the different stuff that you can do. But yeah, just so here we've got a little Western district, little saloon for you there. Very interesting. Okay, so these are little parcels, but what is the size and scope of the actual world, and how are we building it?
Well, the actual world is going to be huge. It's going to be about 4 miles on one edge of the cube. All right. So the top half of the cube is going to be something like 16 square miles, roughly the size of GTA 5 or something. And there are 6 sides to this cube. And we're going to be unveiling land sales initially on the top side of the cube with about 5 districts. And we'll be expanding over time to the other 4 sides of the cube. And again, we don't talk about the bottom of the cube yet. So it's actually quite a huge world that we're dealing with here. And there'll be, a number of user lots available, but plus a huge amount of space that's reserved for things like roads, train systems, city parks, that kind of stuff.
Right. So it's not the entire world is not player owned, right? Like there's a strong player ownership component, but then there's
The players will own about 2/3 of this landscape. The other 1/3 we will, basically build thematically, and this will include things like, ponds, rivers, roads, city parks, city structures. But most of this world will actually be player designed and player created.
very interesting. Okay. Here's a little, since Will was talking about the land sale, a little just sneak peek at land parcels being generated from afar. But yeah, just to kind of, it's the scale of it is very ambitious, right? And it's meant to instill this sense of awe, and it's meant to have all these different reasons to feel awe, right? Like whether you're in the middle of the city and it's awesome because it's crazy and cyberpunk and it has that megalopolis feel, or whether you're on the bottom side, which we don't talk about, or whether you're in the middle of the desert mining for spice or whatever it is. There's so many just different vibes to it.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to have, if you were just walking, it would take you, 30 minutes to an hour to walk across one side of this cube. But we'll have a rapid transit system where, in fact, you could, get on the train and get there in a minute or two. So transportation is actually a pretty important part of this entire thing.
Now for the game, are you going to have also objectives and missions? It's not just going to be the metaverse, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, you'll be, constructing things out of resources, which you can go off to the wilderness and mine yourself. Or if you have the resources already, you can be building structures on the land that you own. So you might be constructing a nightclub or an auto dealership or whatever in the central city, or you might go off and go prospecting, for resources off in the wilderness. So there'll be a lot of different objectives that you can choose to partake, even social. I just want to meet a lot of people and build up my, social reputation.
Well, let's introduce some systems before talking about game loops a little bit. So first off, we've got this mega world that we're building, right? Who's building it?
Well, primarily the players are building it. I mean, we're going to be building some areas in the central city, and in the initial districts. So, in the hard district, we'll probably build a few buildings in a graveyard, whatever. The western area will build a tavern, et cetera, et cetera. But primarily those areas will be built by the players, depending on which Vox they have and what drop they have.
You see what I'm segueing to here, Will? What technology will they be using?
Yeah, we're kind of leaning into this thing that we're calling shape cameras, which is the idea that a player can construct stuff just by simply clicking on what they like. it's kind of an evolutionary system where you take a blueprint of a building or a car or a coffee cup or a couch or whatever, and then you get variants of it. You click the variant you like. I like that couch because it's wider, or it's more red, or it's taller, whatever. And then it keeps giving you offspring. So simply by clicking and clicking and clicking, you're actually evolving a new couch or car or a building. This is what we're calling shape grammars. And we're allowing the players very simply, without having to learn a 3D system, to create unique 3D objects in the game that they can now, if they have the resources, produce. I want that couch. I want that building. I want that car. This is something we're going to be using at very different levels within the game, all across, so that every player is creating their own unique items if they choose.
So, and I know I've seen a lot of questions from the community about this. As far as scale, how grand does this get? Am I designing skyscrapers via shape grammar? Can I make mountain ranges via shape grammar? Like, how big and small does this get?
Well, in terms of big, it's going to be probably a building scale.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be re-terraforming the world. That's going to be generated off the bat. But in terms of designing a skyscraper, a house, nightclub, whatever, yes. And down from there, it could be I'm designing, the furniture in the nightclub. I'm designing the coffee cups in the nightclub, or my own vehicles. So this is something we're going to be slowly unveiling over time. Different categories of shape grammar. Initially probably buildings to begin with. I can design a structure, and then working our way down from there.
Okay, very interesting. And so what you're creating here is this deep sort of mutative, is that a word? Crafting system, or crafting tree, essentially. And so as people explore these and go down different rabbit holes, they're unlocking blueprints that others have never seen before, right? Like the number of permutations here is just so mind-boggling. And so you can get to places that where no one's ever been before, essentially.
Yeah, no, I mean, 2 or 3 clicks into this, you're probably going to be to something that nobody's ever discovered. And you can choose to patent that if you want to, in which case somebody else can open their, like a Kia catalog, and find this cool couch that you've designed and say, I just want that. I'm not even going to play with shape grammar. I want to buy that couch. It'll give them a cost, to purchase that couch, but you'll get, some revenue because you patented it, having discovered it or designed it, through this evolutionary system.
Right. So already there's this creator game of like getting there first, essentially.
I mean, I think it's beyond astronomical in terms of the number of whatever buildings, couches, coffee cups, whatever that you could design. It's beyond astronomical. So it's pretty easy for you to get to a 67 Camaro or an Eames chair or whatever, and I think people are going to be trying to replicate, real world designs within the shape grammar.
Do you think people have more fun replicating things that they love from the real world, or just coming up with crazy, fantastical, like Dr. Seuss type stuff?
Well, that's going to be a market economy. So if other people really want a 67 Camaro versus some crazy weird design, it's up to the market to decide, how many players actually chose to buy your Camaro, and you get a cut of that, having patented it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather leave that up to players.
I think that's going to be a lot of fun to see, because this is where like the law don't really apply, and then you go ahead and could really build whatever, but perhaps people do want something tangible, right? Something that they're used to seeing that they can't obtain IRL, and now they have this ability of building it or purchasing it, or making it something completely out of the, I don't know. Yeah. I would think more something that like we can't create in this world.
Right. I'd rather the players assign the value to it than us.
Yeah.
So the players can decide, I really want that crazy car you made, or that crazy building, rather than us saying it's worth X or Y,
Of course. Supply and demand.
And so in theory, I could be driving, a car that's 17 stories tall that doesn't make any sense, with one wheel, and it's just kind of wobbling and hobbling along the roads because there's demand for it.
Exactly. If the players find it entertaining, humorous, whatever, then they get the benefit of meeting that demand.
They screw the laws of physics.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you've already touched on kind of two core systems here with the marketplace for things and the marketplace for resources, right? So we want to create and foster this sense of like true player, like a true player-to-player economy, where you're just going out and you're harvesting these resources, and maybe you're just selling resources on the open market. And the value of those resources is going to be determined by the rarity of them, right? So like,
Yeah.
It's essentially like, is spice everywhere, or is spice very limited, and do you happen to have access to it? Is the market flooded with wood, or was there a forest fire and now there's no wood, and so your stockpiles are worth more? So that's already a really interesting economy. But then with one level up is almost the economy of things, where you're creating chairs or Camaros or giant Dr. Seuss vehicles, and just kind of trying to guess what the people want. So that's really cool. Speaking of economies, let's talk about primary economies in this game.
Yeah, I mean, so we're going to have several kind of interlocking economies here. One of the most obvious one is things, and these things will feed my needs. These boxes will have needs like Sims do, things like hunger, energy, fun, social. And a lot of these objects will feed those needs. I can drink coffee to get energy. I can interact with people to get fun or social, etc. Money is something that's going to be a transitory economy. If I need to buy something that takes 30 wood and 10 metal and 5 silicon, maybe I have no silicon, but I can go buy it on the open market, depending on how available silicon is. And these commodities will vary in price, depending on the availability and how many people are harvesting them, etc. Time is really, what do I do in the game? Am I spending my time feeding my needs, building things, exploring, gathering resources, etc.? But I think the most important economy in this game is going to be social. Every time you meet a Vox, you're going to establish a relationship with that box. And, the relationship will, go from weak to strong, depending on how long I interact with the Vox, and good to bad, depending on, exactly what happens between us. I think certain classes of Voxes will have initialized certain benefits here. So, for instance, trolls might be more likable. Now, the sum of your relationships with all the Voxes you interact with and meet will come up to your reputation score. And these are the ones on the upper right here, like, trusted, feared, famous, that as you interact with more and more Voxes, you're going to start building a reputation for your Vox. And in some sense, this is going to be like the class system for the Voxes. So if I want to be a crime lord down the road, I want to be feared and famous. If I want to be, let's say, a popular entertainer, I want to be liked and famous. So different combinations of these reputation scores will unlock different abilities for your character in the game.
Okay, so really the meta of taking care of your Vox kind of revolves around these 4 global attributes, right? Like trusted, feared, and famous. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish with your Vox, you're trying to optimize for some of these, right? So maybe you're trying to be a superstar, maybe you're trying to be Al Capone, maybe you're trying to be, everyone's best friend or whatever it is. And that is the sum of kind of all your interactions with different Vox.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, yeah. I think that the ultimate role that you're going to play in the game, it's going to come down to your reputation, your social reputation in the game. And this will unlock different abilities for your Vox, what they can do, and how they interact with everybody else. So I think no matter what Vox you start with a troll or a town star or Walking Dead. They'll be initialized in certain areas. Walking Dead might be more feared, trolls might be more liked, etc. You can overcome that if you want to. So it'll be very rare for a Walking Dead character to be very liked and trusted, but it's possible. And that opens roles for you that are very interesting and lead you kind of to a certain character class.
Yeah, so this is interesting because when you say class, you mean like an MMO class, right?
Yeah, like healer, warrior, cleric, whatever. Yeah.
And so those are being managed through the various ways of optimizing these four stats, right? And so if you're coming from a particular Vox series and that's what you hold, then you're kind of inclined to go in one direction versus another, right?
Yeah,
And
for instance, if you have a troll, you might initially be much more liked than the other Vox series.
Mhm.
And that might, if you're liked and trusted or liked and famous, you might unlock the ability to dance and sing, which makes all the Voxes around you have more fun. All right, so you're actually recharging their fun stat by doing that. So, by having a troll Vox, you actually now have this kind of superpower that's easily attainable, but it's much harder for like a Walking Dead character to get there. For them, it's much easier to get to, feared and famous, where they scare people away. So I think each class is going to have their own kind of superpower that they're more inclined to, but you can overcome that if you want to be something like a real outlier to that class.
Do you think at that point those are gonna be like the rare ones?
Yeah, well, the rare ones will be a Walking Dead character that's, liked and trusted, right? And so if you have a zombie that's liked and trusted, and so he starts dancing and everybody gets fun, that's going to be really weird, but it's possible.
It's here, but I think that's where the fun comes in too. I'm like, I keep on going back to this, like, let's do something different, and then how is it gonna be like a more noticeable player or character in the game? And it's like by, I don't know, do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, certain
Ordinary.
players want to have like certain, very unique characters. And so if I have a zombie that's great at singing and dancing, that's really weird and unique. I pop in the game, start singing and dancing as a zombie, and everybody around me gets fun. That's cool.
that is really cool, and it's very interesting to see because these things are at the end of the day they're 721 assets, right? They're NFTs, and they have a certain set of attributes. But as you start to like play with them and develop them and create, the zombie that everyone loves who can sing and dance, that's awesome, right? But I wonder how people will view that from a rarity perspective. Whether the definition of rarity will evolve at that point.
Well, I would think it would. I mean, if I have a zombie that entertains everybody and everybody loves to be around, that's going to be extremely rare, right? It's going to take me a long time to get there, right? I have to overcome a lot of my initial, stats and push it in different ways. So I have to actually play the game quite a bit to get him there, right? Which makes him extremely rare and valuable.
That's really cool. And we'll talk about the trolls in just a second, but just to address some of the other series, will there like balance is key here, right? Like it makes no sense to have sort of a broken series, right? It's just how do you use these four attributes to create a world where like each one of these characters is primed to serve a different role. And at the end of the day, as you're like existing in VOXverse and you have all these different Voxes, like you're gonna need sort of different optimizations in order to experience different parts of the game, right? And so
this is true of any system in the game. I mean, it could be what class of Vox you have. Is it Walking Dead or is it Troll? It has to do with what biome are you in? Are you in desert or jungle? What theme are you in? Are you in Western or medieval? Every one of these systems has to be balanced in kind of a Taoist yin yang way, right? And that's the essence of game design.
love that. All right, let's talk about the trolls a little bit. Okay, so just in light of these systems, What you're saying, Will, is that the trolls will be primed to be liked in VOXverse, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they're going to be like the party animals of the world.
And what does that mean for what I can do? Like,
Well, it means that they're right off the bat better at boosting fun for everybody around them. And that's not a big issue for their needs as well. They're more consumed with, in terms of needs, they're dealing with, fun, social, hunger, energy. So fun is not going to be a big issue for them. They have fun. All right. And every other class is going to have, a similar kind of balance. There's, one or two needs that they really don't have to worry about. The other ones are a big concern for them. The trolls, they can dance, they can sing, whatever, but it uses up their energy. So they have to eat a lot or whatever, right? So, to balance that out, they have to, recharge their other needs probably more often than other classes, right?
So you're saying they're sort of like fun support.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you can think of the other, classes in the same way, but basically they have certain needs that, they very easily recharge, but other ones that they need to fill up to use their special ability.
That's very interesting. All right. So incidentally, Trolls Vox, which drop on Coinbase NFT exclusively on the 14th, come with a 1 in 5 chance of owning land in VOXverse. Let's talk about land a little bit. So what does it mean to be a land parcel owner in VOXverse? Well, what can I do with that land that someone who isn't a land owner can't? What does it mean for my resource availability? What does it mean for my gameplay?
Well, starting with resources, I mean, every plot of land will have a certain set of resources attached to it, depending on where you are, what biome, etc. Now, you can choose to have your Vox or character mine those resources and acquire them, getting wood, metal, silicon, etc. I can also open that to other prospectors. I can say, anybody can actually come and mine wood or metal or stone on my land, but we split it. And I probably get to determine the split, 50-50, so every 10 pieces of wood, I keep 5, you keep 5. Or I can keep it to myself. I can say, oh, nobody can mine my land, only I can. Of course, at that point, you have permissions to build upon it. Once you have the resources, you can now start building a structure. And it might be your house, it might be some business, a nightclub, a dealership, of some sort, a furniture store, etc. And of course, you can sell land down the road. But I think as a landowner, we're actually looking at 3 kind of rough classes of player. One would be the landowner, but I think you can also, let's say I, decided I wanted to have somebody build a nightclub, somebody who is a creator, a very creative player, spending a lot of time in the game, that wants to come in, and I give them a budget and say, build me a nightclub, build me a restaurant, build me a car dealership, whatever. They take the budget I give them and they build that. I still own it, but they get a percentage of the sales. So they could be actually building and running my nightclub, even though I'm just sitting back as landowner. And they're trying to basically service the casual players. I'm trying to build some establishment where casual players can come in, refill their needs, fun, social, whatever. And so they get a benefit. The casual players get a benefit from coming into my nightclub. I get a benefit from actually designing and building it and promoting it. And the landowner gets a benefit, of the profits from all of this. So we're actually kind of looking at 3 classes of player, really kind of like the landowners, the managers, business, runners, and the casual players. And we basically want the business owners or the business managers to be servicing the casual players, building something that is a benefit to casual players coming in, refilling their needs, earning some money that then goes back to the landowner.
All right, that is a lot to unpack. So let's talk about land resources a little bit. So based on the location of my land plot, and that can be, you know, whether it's on the city center, you know, on the side that's more deserty, or whether it's in the middle of the desert, or wherever it is, that location is going to determine the sort of allocation of resources that I get, or like the different types of resources available to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I might be in the Western District. Near the center of that district, I might open a saloon. Casual players can come into that saloon, recharge their energy, social, fun, by paying some amount. There's a person actually building, maintaining, and running that business, the saloon, that's given a budget by the landowner, you know, and splitting the profits with the landowner. So you basically have the middle class trying to service the casual players, you know, so they come in, they spend X amount of money to recharge their needs. That middle player, the manager, splits half the profits with landowner, and the landowner is giving the middle player, the manager, a budget, you know, every week, every whatever, to expand the saloon, make it more attractive, add more objects, you know, whatever it is, you know, player piano, singers, attractions, you know, and they're competing with other saloons in the Western District.
Right. So it sounds like at that middle level is where value is being created. And let's talk about this for a second. And let's remind people, because I believe we've said this in previous AMAs. But the actual P2E rewards in the VOXverse are going to come from this notion of social benefit. Are you contributing to creating a better environment for your fellow players?
Right. So imagine you have 3 saloons in the Western District, all right, and they're competing for casual players.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is the best, as a casual player, which is the best saloon for me to go to,
Mm-hmm.
recharge my needs.
Mm-hmm.
So the middle managers here are competing for these casual players, saying my saloon is better than yours, come to my saloon. All right. And this might involve marketing, it might involve what you have in your saloon, entertainment options, a lot of different things. Who's there?
Who's there? Yeah.
Crowd. You have, you know, so these middle managers are going to be very competitive for the casual players, right?
Mm-hmm. But
and the landowners are going to be very competitive for the best managers. I have this big plot of land. I want the best manager. It's like a coach in football. I want the best coach for my team, you know, and, you know, I'm going to sit out there and look for the best up and coming coach. I want to basically hire them to manage my land.
And in theory, if I'm an owner who wants to be more involved, then I can cut out the middleman, right? Like,
oh yeah. I mean, if you're an owner and you want to do the whole thing yourself, that's fine.
Like,
you know,
ownership is the enabling factor. You can then decide how passive or active you want to be about it, right?
Yeah.
But so ownership does provide you that kind of passive route to creating social benefit. But if you're active, then you're cutting out the middleman, or, you know, you're running a lot of stuff. You're running a ton of different establishments, servicing a ton of different needs, and so you've got a bunch of different creative managers that are servicing casual players on your behalf.
Yeah. But, you know, go ahead.
If you wanted, if you had different saloons, right, you want other people to like manage it, or you want someone else to like rent it out, would that be a possibility, or is that not an option?
No, that's the point of it, is that I can buy a piece of land and I can hire a manager, give them a budget, and say, build me a successful saloon or nightclub or whatever. And I can always fire them, you know, but I'm splitting the profits, you know. But we want the landowners to be competing for the managers
And to create,
taking over the manager position themselves. You know, if I'm a landowner and I want to build my own nightclub and run it myself, that's fine. That's great. I don't have to split the profits with anybody.
perfect.
Laura, let's check in with you a little bit. So you're our voice of the audience here. What do you think?
I think a lot of fun actually. I'm interested to see where people take it, because all I'm listening, through the conversation is this is going to be up to each and every one of the players, and that's a lot of fun, right? This is not like, hey, we're creating all these rules. It's like we are setting up the atmosphere for you guys to go ahead and create, right? For you guys to come up with this storytelling and saying, how do you want to build your characters? How do you want to build your space? And how is this going to make an impact, right? Like how you're going to outshine someone else and then make this like an economy. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And as the voice of the audience, I'm like, I have so many questions, but I'll leave those for the end. And I'm excited to see how this evolves and how more people are gonna create the wildest things.
I think I mean, this is Will, not to speak for you, but this is Will's whole design philosophy, right? Is like, give the players the tools to have their own fun. Don't tell them how to have fun. Which
it's about build Darwinian systems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's survival of the fittest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And players are really good at finding, what's the fittest. I think they're better at figuring out how to entertain other players than we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then as far as hunger for like that more narrative driven, give me missions, give me quests, give me stakes, give me stuff. Will, you don't like talking about that other side of the cube, right? But let's just say we're keeping that quiet until the lore and the story is finalized. But that's sort of where you're going to be going for the more hardcore, like, I think I'm not allowed to curse on these anymore, but shit hits the fan.
Everything is gonna go blank now. It's like, thank you for joining us.
No, we're reserving the bottom, not only the bottom side of the cube, but dare I say the interior of the cube.
Spooky.
Yeah, at some point, we're going to start exploring the interior of this cube, going inwards. And that's where it's going to get really wild.
That's really interesting. All right, guys. Actually, let's do one more on just before we move off land here, Will. I've gotten a lot of questions about like building land. How high can I build? Does it matter how many plots I own? Do I just need one? Do I need more than one? What say you?
Well, I mean, we're going to have different lots of different values. Some will be large and, worth a lot. Other ones will be worth a lot because they're closer to the city center. There are going to be a number of factors that go into the value of a plot of land.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably have some restrictions on the height that you can build on a certain plot, but those might be expanded by the number of lots you have nearby each other. So if you have several lots in proximity, you can actually build higher than you could otherwise. So there'll be benefits to owning nearby lots, etc. We haven't figured out the specifics of all that.
And I love the you've kind of touched on the rarity system for the land, but for those who aren't aware, as opposed to like a simple kind of size or proximity model, Will has divined this whole algorithm which determines the rarity of a plot, but through like so many different factors. It takes into account size, it takes into account resources, it takes into account proximity to a city center, but also to different portals to different games. It takes into account whether the property is waterfront or not. It takes into account elevation. And so you can have two plots that are the same rarity for very different reasons. One's on the hottest coastline in Voxopolis, and the other is rare because it happens to have a spice reservoir on it. And one's rare because it's huge. One's rare because it's really high altitude and has an amazing view. So that seeing that and seeing which rarities excite different types of players, or which types of rarities excite different types of players.
Yeah, there'll be probably about 8 to 10 dimensions determining the rarity.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. All right, guys. So just to recap, it's the social game we've laid out in front of you. The sort of dragons be here type game, which Will refuses to talk about, is being tidied up. and will be our next sort of interesting reveal to you guys. There's gameplay in VOXverse revolves around this sort of global reputation system, of which different Vox from different series are primed to have different reputations. And so we've got our little troll friends who are primed to be liked. And as far as needs, you've got those energy, social, hunger, fun. Your troll Vox actually, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Will, can dance around and service sort of the fun need of those around it, right? But again, at the expense of the energy need of its own person, right? So every Vox will have sort of, through a unique combination of these attributes, a different role to play and a different niche to occupy. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think every Vox drop will have its own unique superpower like that.
Awesome. Okay, guys, we are approaching the 45-minute mark here. So I did want to give you a little something as far as gameplay footage. I want to be clear that this is sort of an art demo. It's a bit early and a bit old at this point, and I'll tell you why in a second. But Paul, let's go ahead and cut to that. Able to actually see, feel, touch, interact with VOXverse. And this is the reason we're keeping art materials quite close to our chest, is going to be later this year, before the end of the year. So I know people are kind of thinking, this is a super ambitious project. It'll be fun playing this, 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line. By the end of this year, for landowners, you guys are going to be able to actually see, interact with the world, and crucially, start building it. Right, as Will kind of mentioned, we want this place to be completely built by you guys. We want this place to be, the product of your imagination, the product of your, resources that you harvested in Odyssey, or resources that you got from your land. What crazy, wacky combinations are you going to come up with? Let's find out this year. So, with that, are we back on slides? With that, I think that's a lot of talk about gameplay, and we will get to audience questions, I promise. But I just did want to touch on one last thing, which we get a lot of questions about, and which we've been quiet about for a little bit, which is DeFi. Let's not forget how Vox started. We've got this magical, crazy world that's springing out of Will's mind, that we're building, but Vox are avatars that DeFi. And so just a little bit about how that works. We are announcing that the Vox team is building a DEX on Geary for Geary tokens and assets, and that Vox will be at the very heart of that DEX system. My economist will kill me for misrepresenting anything, and so I will not be going into tokenomics detail, but I promise you a substantive update on the tokenomics of this system, again, before the end of this year. But you can go ahead and confirm that Vox will be building the DEX for Gala tokens and assets on Geary. So there's a little mic drop for you. And with that, I think we can cut back to faces, and take some questions from the audience and answer some of the questions that you guys had submitted before. Cool. All right. Laura's going to be our moderator here on questions.
Perfect. I am ready. And we have quite a few questions, so I'm sure we're gonna get through a lot of them today. I hope so. I know that one of the questions that was, I thought a few times is that it was for Will. So are we gonna have similar elements to previous games that you have worked on, such as like Spore or Sims? And can we get an example if it's gonna be something similar or something completely different?
Well, I think the shape grammar thing is quite similar to the creature creator we had in Spore, where with a few clicks, a player can create something very unique that nobody else has created. In terms of the voxes themselves or the characters in the game, that's going to be quite similar to the needs that the Sims have, although simplified. So in VOXverse, we'll have a smaller number of needs that you have to refill that allow your Vox to go off and do whatever they want to do. So I think, yeah, in certain areas like the needs for the Sims or the shape grammar versus creature creator in Spore, yeah, there'll be a lot of kind of analogs to that.
Well, not to hijack this question, but where else are you drawing inspiration from, or is this and where would you put this? What game would you put this next to, or would you put it in its own category? Like,
well, and another way is it's almost like SimCity, where the players are creating the city as a whole. I mean, SimCity, you kind of build in the entire city yourself. But what if you were playing SimCity and there were, tens of thousands of players deciding what buildings to put where, right? And that's going to be the shape of this world. But this world is going to be huge. It's going to be much bigger than any SimCity version. Again, it's going to be much bigger than GTA or anything like that. So this is going to be one of the largest worlds I've ever imagined in a game.
Okay, and with that, some of the unique features that they're gonna have. So a dwarf walks is gonna be able to, have stronger ores, or the elves are gonna be able to make very light, armor from clothes. So how is that gonna look like in this particular when we're speaking about the features? And I know we spoke a lot about the different features when it comes to like lands and different players and different roles.
Well, we're talking about a number of different dimensions intersecting each other. They're the biomes that have different resources. They're the districts, Western, medieval, horror, that have different attributes and superpowers. Proximities to different areas of the world. Resources, how they're basically allocated through the world. I think we're looking at about 4 or 5 dimensions of intersection here. And when you add those up, it's a huge number of combinations. And within that, you say, what are the different player roles they can take on? In the social, reputation score, I can be liked and feared, liked and trusted, liked and whatever. But I think we're talking about so many intersections of different dimensions that there's going to be a fairly infinite variety of roles that a player can take with their character in this world.
Absolutely, and I think that this is where I'm sure like all the questions come from, because then it's also like, can my Vox travel to another land parcel?
Well, yeah,
yes.
Yeah, we're going to have a mass transit system. There's going to be a train system where, in fact, you can get from, one side of the world to the other in 1 or 2 minutes on the train system. So you can actually transit there very quickly. But if you want to go off in the wilderness, you might want to have your own vehicle. You might want to have design a motorcycle or a car so I can go off and mine, stone in the desert, for instance. So there'll be a variety of transit systems, but the proximity to places or resources is going to be a fairly major deal with how you deal with your day-to-day Vox.
And I see here a question from Mixed Clicks, and they were asking if we're going to be able to have an area for events and parties. And I'm assuming this is something that someone could go ahead and create. It's not going to be like a designated area, or am I mistaken?
Well, in the central city, we're going to have a very actually large central park where we have major events. You know, it might be concerts, videos, reveals, whatever. There's going to be a very large area in the central city, Voxopolis, that we're reserving for that. But players can also create their own performance spaces. You know, I might have an art exhibit, a video performance, a music performance, whatever. The players can create on their own terms, on their own land, and they can, you know, choose to charge or not charge for people coming to, you know, witness it.
Okay, and I know that we touched on the idea of like renting our land, right, or renting our saloon, but then people had questions just about the actual land. That are we going to be able to just use it for entertainment for Fox holders, or are we going to be able to earn actual tokens of money, anything like that?
Well, yeah, on the land parcels you own, there'll be resources that you can mine yourself.
Okay.
And you can also allow people to come in and mine them on your behalf, in which case you split the profits with them. But you can also, you know, hire a manager, give them a budget, and say, build me a nightclub or a business here. In which case you will be splitting the profit with, you know, so you can have a creative player come in and develop your land if you don't want to spend the time to and earn from that. Or you can do it yourself.
I think you could pretty much do everything and anything. So almost like some of the other questions, I'm like, someone wants an airship, and just like, please, let's, can we create one? Because I would really like that. And it's Grog Dis. That's the name, but I'm assuming yes.
Shout out, we met him at New York Comic Con.
Oh, no way, that's awesome. I'm glad I decided to read his name because
when we get into vehicles, I mean, that's a cool area for me. I mean, I want to eventually have a shape camera for jetpacks or airships or whatever, you know. That's something that's going to be down the road, but it's certainly achievable, yeah.
So there you have it. You could start crafting. I feel like everyone's going to be so ready to start building, so you can start planning from now all the options that you have and just go for it, because I think the opportunities are endless, and your imagination, which I think this is part of the fun, Will. I love how you're so committed not only to building something with passion and something that's good, but also where people could have the reins into deciding what is this going to look like, right? This is not like,
I mean,
like to say, you're like, I don't want to tell them how to have fun.
I mean, a big part of this, I think, is going to be us getting community feedback. You know, so if the community says we want airships or jetpacks or whatever, I think we would need to respond to that, you know. So a lot of this is going to be not just, you know, what they build on the landscape that we've designed already, but what things do they want in the future? And we need to respond to that saying, okay, they want airships or whatever. And so I think the community really has to have a strong voice in terms of where this goes.
Absolutely. And this is part of, reality for any Web3 NFT initiative. If you're not listening to your community, eventually people are going to go to the next place, right? Regardless if you have the best technology, the best team, if you're not listening to the feedback and you're not willing to take that feedback and make it better or make it something more entertaining for them, then I think that's the downfall for all. I know that. Go ahead.
It's not just listening to them, but being able to respond to them very rapidly. So they say they want jetpacks or airships. We need to be in a position where we can respond to that very rapidly and give it to them.
And make it happen. Absolutely, guys. All right. So we're just about at time. Laura, do you want to squeeze in one more question?
I have one last question from Free Web Starter. And the question is, will players be able to create mini games?
Well, we're hoping that in the building tools that we can give them the type of affordances that they can create really interesting experiences. And we'll have to kind of get deeper into that. But basically, we're looking at, the type of objects you can place in a building or a plot. It might be a teleporter, it might be a gate, it might be a one-way gate. But with these very simple objects, they should probably be able to, create very interesting interactive experiences.
Exciting. And I know you said that there is going to be, a landscape at the Central Park for parties. So are we going to be able to stream music?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, that's a given.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So Gala music.
Yeah. Yeah. We should be able to do, premieres of videos, music, whatever. That's kind of like a given.
I'm gonna just put a lid on this Gala music one real quick. We're
Okay.
not ready to announce something that may or may not be announced. But trolls are pretty musical.
Yeah, we're planning on that. Yeah.
But yes. So guys, we're just at time. We're supposed to be wrapping it up. I'm supposed to be landing the plane right now. But hearing that the community wants us to keep going, hearing that there's a lot more questions, and so Laura, Will, you guys get to keep going for 10 more minutes, let's say.
I'm good.
All good.
Laura, keep them coming.
I was like, I'm going through them. I think I got almost all of them, to be honest.
I want to
I was looking at Discord, and I'm looking here at the chat as well to see if I missed something. But if there's something that you want to touch on while I find another question.
Yeah, go ahead and look through the questions. Couple of things that I wanted to touch on. First was a question that I saw that hasn't been asked, but I want to ask you, Will. Someone asked if we can build or do things underwater. They wanted to build some sort of like aquatic Atlantis type world.
I've just recently been thinking about that. I think it's something that we will approach later on, but I would love to have underwater civilizations, cities, building. I would love to do that. And we have plenty of land for doing that. But I don't want to commit to it yet.
Okay, I have a question.
Go ahead.
About more collaborations. We have, so many big names part of this whole ecosystem. So what is that going to look like for collabs? Is that something that we could discuss or not yet?
I'm not sure what you said. Collabs?
Like collaborations with either other NFT projects, other Web3 initiatives. Is this something that is in the works, or for now?
We're in full collab mode, Laura. We are.
I think it's an Ollie question.
Yeah.
I know, but what I'm saying is, like, later down the line, would there be possibilities where people are so excited about everything being built to join at any point?
Absolutely. There's going to be our community will hear this week about an exciting collaboration that will be sort of the first of many in a new initiative that we're launching. And then as far as like involving other communities in the building of this world, we absolutely have a plan as well around that, which I won't get into now. Okay, guys. One last thing I wanted to touch on, then I think let's wrap it up. Someone had asked a question about land and like earning from the resources and whatever. I just wanted to kind of lay out how this works. So you've got the sort of in-game economy where your land is generating resources, you're selling that on an open market, and people are using those resources or using the things that you're building with them to create more social benefit for others, right? And if you're a landowner, then they're using your resource, your land, to host establishments that create more social benefit for others, right? And so that's the sort of in-game layer. And then on top of that, you have the P2E layer, which is calculated based on how much good you're contributing to the world at large. I know people are going to have a ton more questions given how much we covered today, but I think this was a good time to wrap it up. Guys, just some quick highlights from here. We ran through some of the core gameplay systems. We ran through the social systems. In light of the social systems, we talked about kind of the niche of trolls. So trolls are the fun bomb, right? They're the ones that are going to be the most liked, the most congenial, and that means they're as they interact with different Voxes in VOXverse, they're the ones that are going to have the easiest time sort of collaborating, getting hired, creating businesses. That likability stat is a good one, but with all the other series, there's going to be a balance there. And then we talked about land parcels. We talked about a ton of different stuff. Don't miss this AMA. If you're just tuning in, go back and watch from the start. There's a lot of juicy, meaty bits there, and then our big announcement around the Vox team building the decks for Gala assets as well. Don't miss that. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thank you, Will and Laura, for your time. Thank you guys for being an amazing community and always letting us know what you think and always interacting with us and always watching these streams, because you're dying to see more, and we love that about you, and we want to involve you as we create this crazy world. So thanks so much, everyone, and let's sign off.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.